Well, all right, gang, welcome back. Welcome back to Pure Cringe. We are the podcast that goes way back to the first seasons of some of your favorite Bravo TV shows, and we recap them and cringe together. Welcome back, friends. My name is Maria McQuaid. I'm your host for this episode. I am without my dear friend and trusted co-host, Michelle Barchikowski. Michelle had to take a little podcast sabbatical, so she'll be gone for a few episodes, but we hope that she'll be back soon. I know you'll be joining me and missing her and sending her a virtual hug. So we are back at the Project Runway rewatch of the first season. We are really, really excited. We're actually now on episode 7. We have been watching this for quite a while now, and we are loving the rewatch. I know you guys are. My hope is that everybody is firing up their Peacock subscriptions and that we're all rewatching and recapping and recringing together. So let's head right into the recap, friends. We open the morning right after Alexandra's elimination, and we're at the Atlas apartments again. And we see that Robert is predicting the next 3 challenges are the most important. And my first thought is, no shit, Robert. Yes, there's only 3 left, sweetheart. Yes. He went to the Heidi Klum School of Math. Jay says that he feels good designers were lost along the way and can't understand how Robert is still there. I feel the exact same way. When I think about it, I think we could have switched out Robert with probably the last 2 or 3 eliminated designers and got better quality of work for sure. But he is charming and good TV, so who am I to say? And we, of course, do have a crush on him. The podcast in general is crushing on Robert. Wendy says, though, that she feels like Austin and Karasan are like the golden children of the group. And I can see how she would think that. They do tend to win a lot, but their work is so much more polished and just leaps and bounds above, frankly, anyone else's. And now Wendy is saying this is when she's starting to get strategic. She's employing her strategery. So she says that she wants the 3rd slot for the finals. So we head back to the runway now and we see Heidi there. And suddenly the group looks really small. We went from, can remember the first couple of episodes watching this season and thinking, how am I going to remember all of these people's names? And now we hardly have anybody left. And of course, Heidi proves that by doing Heidi math, which is half of you are here, half of you are out. And she says that they are now 2 challenges away from being in the finals. And so for this episode and for this challenge, they are going to create their own collection. So that's actually the name of the episode, Design a Collection. This is like a preview, basically, of the kind of work they would have to do if they can make it to the finals, because that would mean designing an entire collection for Fashion Week. So she says that as a group, they have one day to design a collection. One person is the leader, and they take responsibility for the overall look of the collection. So then, of course, we bring out the models. And this is like a montage that doesn't really change, except this week has some import. Because all of a sudden, when it is Kevin's turn, and Kevin, who previously had Morgan, he picks Martinique. Karasan picks Jenny, and then we're left with Morgan and Melissa. And Wendy is the last person to have to pick. And so she ultimately chooses Melissa. You can almost feel every designer breathe a sigh of relief. And it's funny because that's what Karasan says. She says that every single one of them were relieved when Morgan left and that she just had bad energy. And again, she's like Robert, right? Mostly useless, but such good TV. So we head back to Parsons with Timmy G, and of course they're all in the workroom. And Tim Gunn reiterates the challenge and that they have the remainder of that day and all day the next to work on their designs. Funnily enough, they're designing for the year 2055, which in 2025, which is the year this is being recorded, that doesn't seem super far away. So, but I think at the time they were thinking it would be super futuristic. And so one of the twists in this challenge is that they're going to a vintage clothing store with a $50 budget each. And Kevin is a little whiny when he says that vintage is dated, and Tim says, well, that's the challenge. And so then Robert, it takes him about 20 minutes and he finally makes the connection that, oh, we get to take it apart. And so while they're working together as a group, Each of them is going to be creating a piece of the team leader's collection. So the team leader has the overall vision. And so they're going to be judged on the execution of the design and how well it fits into the team leader's overall concept. And so now they go to determine the leader. And then Tim has that black bag again, the same one that Heidi uses to pick the models. And it's one of those situations where someone wins, and that someone is Kevin, and there are crickets. Nobody cared. Everyone was like, oh God. And then all of a sudden, we see Austin in confessional talking about when they last had a group challenge, Kevin's group was the most hectic. And it made me think, who is the best leader in the group? And if I'm being honest, as much as I know that they are borderline annoying, because they sort of seem to be on repeat with saying, well, I've been a designer for forever and I've designed for so and so and so and so and so and so. Kara San consistently comes up with beautiful designs, and she's very capable. She's very competent. And she's someone who I think pays attention to details. So I think ideally, I think Kara San probably would be a designer that would do a great job. And very likely everyone on the team, whether they were her biggest fan or not, I think she could get them behind her in terms of her ideas and be able to rally, and also too, spoiler alert for what's about to happen, to be able to manage time. So Kevin says that he was a leader before and it went well, Delulu, but he did win that challenge. But it did not go well in terms of his leadership skills at all. But he did win the challenge. Kevin wants them to stick together and collaborate, and he's about as magnetic as a slug. I bet his clothes smell moldy. That's the vibe I get from Kevin. So he half smiles to the group. It's more pleading than leading when he speaks to them. And so then we see Wendy in confessional saying that she doesn't think that Kevin is the greatest leader in the world. However, that suits her because if Kevin is in a leadership position, she assumes, correctly, of course, that he is more vulnerable for elimination. So Tim tries to rally the group and he leaves them and they brainstorm for a few minutes. And they're not sure if they should lean more towards the Jetsons or more of a Blade Runner feel. I can't believe there's even a choice between those two. Kevin wants Blade Runner. Kara San says that the colors are yellow, citron, and green. Ugh. And then Jay says that the color palette is more peachy and tan and khaki and brown. It all sounds awful. It sounds like Dune rejects. And so Wendy says that she thinks the clothes of 2055 will have some type of protection built in. So they talk about these pods that they'll have that are basically like vests or jackets that will cover all the looks that will unify them in that way. And so they head to this place called Cheap Jack's Vintage Clothing with 12 hours to go until the deadline. And so I just want to do a little sidebar here. Whenever I see a vintage store, and this one looks really tiny, but the ones in New York City, if any of you are from New York or have been to any of them, are so, so great. There's one in Brooklyn that I went to a few years ago called Artists and Fleas, and they had just the coolest vintage vendors in this small indoor space. But if any of you are vintage and thrift lovers like myself, please drop your favorite store in the comments underneath this post from Instagram because I'd love to discover some new places. I'll share my two favorites with you. My second, and it's very close to first, it's a hard decision, is in a place called Highlands, North Carolina. It's called Victoria's Closet. It's actually like a thrift compound with multiple structures. They're homes actually on this plot of land sort of in the woods. And there's a men's house and then a house that has just shoes and purses, which is basically Mecca for me. And then another house that has women's clothes, purses, coats, everything. So cool, beautiful, beautiful area as well. My number one, though, is the Unclaimed Baggage Center in Scottsboro, Alabama. It's where all of the unclaimed baggage from the airlines, buses, and trains, I believe, in the United States goes. And so this company buys them, and then anything that is new, they resell it. It's just amazing. So if you get an opportunity, and I think even both of them may have websites as well. So I'll try to link them in the show notes for you guys. I would love to go in the Wayback Machine and go to some thrift stores in New York York in the early 2000s, because I'm sure there are some amazing 70s and 80s clothes that would have just been, I probably would have wept had I found something like that. So I'm glad that I got a chance to share that with you guys. I feel like thrifting and secondhand is just so fun. So I do love the thought process behind this challenge. I just don't know if this group can pull off something cohesive. So Austin is scouring the racks, just looking for things. And he actually mentions that he wants to find a gold lame gown, which obviously, of course he does, which makes me love him even more. Wendy says that she thinks that Kevin is trying to pacify the other designers. And you can see him going from person to person, just grooming them almost. Wendy shows us a little bit or talks a little bit about her design, shows us the sketch. It's 2055 Youth. Is getting a sweater and pants and a crochet top. Jay is doing 2055 nightclub look. He'll have a knit top, some type of gown, some tights, vintage lace. And Jay says he's trying to take an intelligent approach to this, which makes sense. Jay is really smart. And I think we've seen in the last few episodes Jay really go from somebody who is just fucking around to somebody who's really taking it serious. But he's also so funny in the process. I feel like he is our audience representative, right? He can't quite believe the shit that's happening to him on the show, just like we can't. So Jay really is the voice of the audience. He says that Robert seems like he doesn't understand what's happening. And then, of course, the editing is so fucking savage that we see Robert just walking around the shop, just looking confused, just holding a shitload of clothes on his back. And Jay says that Robert is just trying to keep his head above water. And then we see Kevin tell Robert that he's worried about the clothes that he's buying. And Robert says in confessional, just it's basically his version of a woman is, like a sports car. Robert says he doesn't like to think about the future. He wants to deal with the present. So, of course, we know now that he's clearly confused. So Tim Gunn does a 15-minute time call. And whenever he does these, I'm forced to think to myself, was there no better use for Tim Gunn than 15 minutes? Or was he a pioneer for people like Noel Fielding on the Great British Bake Off, who basically their entire career is giving time calls? So we see then Kevin's design, and it's a 2055 service uniform, which I don't really get. I don't know if it's like we're looking at someone who's going to work like at the post office or maybe work on a plane. I don't really get it. It's a quilted jacket with vintage lace and a shirt. They all head back to Parsons and lay all the clothes on a work table and they see what they have all together. And I'm instantly bored. The colors are so snoozy, super snoozy, gang. Honestly, I am just so stunned that they found so many beige clothes. These are my least favorite colors in the universe, too, so I'm a little bit biased. Robert actually stands on a table and looks like he wants to cry because I don't think from any angle those clothes laid out on that table would have made anybody excited or feel creative because they really weren't good. Kara says, though, that to her, the collection looks cohesive. I'm being forced to trust her because she's a professional. In the workroom, though, they have 6 hours before the deadline, and Karasan walks us through their concept and highlights bullet points. So they're talking about nostalgia and, how that shell and that pod is going to connect everything. Austin tells us that Kevin is trying to make an effort, even though he is not always the best communicator. Austin's being very generous here. He must have been very busy making his garment because he doesn't have time to be a bitch this episode. So he says that his design has a luxury element to it, and we all think, no. He's making a cocktail dress. Of course he is. Jay is using pieces of material from everybody's garment, which is so interesting. I feel like Jay's thought process is always something that part of my head always wants to applaud, no matter what he says in terms of what he's using or what he's doing. But it looks really interesting. It's very like Mad Maxy or very Furiosa, we'll say, very Imperator Furiosa. Karasan's design is a business suit, and Kara says she's inserted herself as the co-leader. Thank God. Now that they're making decisions together, it's a little on brand for her, of course, to be confident like this. Robert's look is supposed to be 2055 streetwear. It's already hideous. It's like On Golden Pond meets Hyacinth Bouquet from Keeping Up Appearances. It has solar panels on the shoulders of this beige, half full puffer vest that looks more like a fishing vest. Austin is trying not to laugh out loud at Robert's idea, and he says that he's always the weak link. And I agree. I just don't think we noticed until a couple of episodes ago because there were so many people. We just didn't have time to notice how crazy he is. I don't know that he it looks like he can't escape it, like this horrible encounter where she's like kissing his ass and like holding onto his hand with both hands and like deeply staring into his eyes. The whole thing was disgusting. Wendy can always find a way to turn me right off. She's just so fake. And even if I try to give her some credit for being a decent designer, she always repays me by just being a horrible human. So finally, the joy is brought back into the workroom in the form of Timmy. So Tim Gunn comes back, and we have 4 hours to go. And he is equal parts confused and horrified by what he sees. He tells Kevin that he wants to be sure that it doesn't bomb out as a collection, and he tells Kevin that he is responsible. So he is walking around, and I guess I would call it a dazed panic if you didn't see it. You can see the panic level rising though with Tim and Kevin, and he tries to explain every look, and Tim is just not buying any of it, and he keeps pushing back. And so finally he says, "All right, I'm reluctantly leaving you," and he walks out. And now we are down to 2 hours left. And Jay's self doubt has arrived to the party. So all of a sudden he starts to panic. And he's like, "Why do I hate everything I make on this fucking show?" And everyone's thoughts turn to Rob and his ability to stick around. And like I said, I think he's in the middle for quite a bit. And it was charming, right? And nice smile makes good TV. And Karasan says the same thing, and she says he serves up that smile and a dirty comment, and then we harken back to that comment about women being like cars. Then we have 30 minutes until the deadline, and they're running late, so they completely abandon the pod concept. That's right, the actual piece that unifies the entire collection. They abandon the entire concept. And once they do that, the cohesion is completely gone. And so the lineup is really bad. Nothing is connected. Jay freaks the fuck out and gets up to leave and says his stuff is sticking out like a sore thumb. Back at Atlas that evening, they're all laying on the couch and Jay is eating a box of dry cereal. He is so my spirit animal. Karasan calls a team meeting to prep them for the questions that they will surely get on the runway. And Wendy is very butthurt about it because they're doing it. She's very like laughing right at their faces, rolling her eyes. She's just obnoxious. We finally get to the day of the runway show and we go to the workroom. And then we see Tim, who's with Jay. And Jay and Tim say that they don't see 2055 in the design. And Tim laughs and he tells Jay, "I want you to bullshit me." So it was a really fun and cute moment. Tim talks to Wendy and she basically throws Kevin under the bus. And weirdly, Tim agrees. Thought that was very strange. And you can see that Tim is super worried. He says individually that they are impressive, but as a collection, his brain is bleeding. And everything he says, I'm just like golf clapping off to the side. He's brilliant. And it's the truth when he tells Kevin that his is the most separate. I don't get his look at all. The color palette seems off and it seems too finished. So Jay is outside smoking. As we've discussed, it's the thing that can be a game changer when you actually smoke, saying that his look is more like Holly Hobby craft project, and he's not psyched about it. But he comes back into the workroom ranting. This project sucks my ass from the inside out. And again, everything he says is should be made into a t-shirt. He rants about time and resources. And as soon as he's done, we cut to those models, fittings and L'Oreal hair and makeup. And then we get to the runway and we see Heidi, who's wearing like jeans and one of my mom's Cracker Factory cardigans with the sparkles on the shoulders. And she does her math again. Out of 12, there are six of you left. And we do our right back at the judges, what we normally do when we introduce Michael Kors and Slawi, and of course, Betsy fucking Johnson, who is just amazing, obviously, and amazing sense of style. So we start with Austin, and his is again the cocktail dress. It is surprisingly wearable, even though it mostly looks like drapes. It does give Romanian dancer for me. Then we see Robert, and he has this streetwear, and he has a scally cap and that quilted jacket and the widest, craziest dark beige cuffed pants. It's just the look is inexplicable. Then we have Kevin, the service uniform. It's not bad. It would be cool for like a futuristic flight attendant, but he thinks it's amazing. But it's completely different from everything else we're seeing on the runway. Wendy has the 2055 youth outfit. This is gross. This is a It looks like she took apart a sweater and created fringe on the skirt, and then a part of it fell off. Um, and the worst hairstyling, it actually looks like somebody who's been styling Wendy's hair, maybe Wendy herself, also did her model's hair. It's really bad. Then we see Jay in his look, which is that amazing nightclub look. It is weirdly interesting, like all of his work, but beautifully finished. And then we see Karasan. The coat is actually so cool. It's giving gothic vampire, but in neutrals. Um, there's a Walkman. She actually made her Walkman part of it and made it in the and put it in the garter. It was so cool. The models come out again for a loop, and then the designers step up. And so since they created in a group, they'll all stay on the runway for the Q&A. And so it starts with Heidi to Kevin. And he says it's a post-war apocalyptic society. They appreciate nature. There's earth tones. And then Michael asks Kara about her look, and you can clearly tell he's impressed with the coat. Robert, of course, bullshits them. It's not even worth repeating what he says. He just bullshits them. Something about the energy and the solar panels. Jay calls his girl the 3 a.m. girl and that she'll just be coming home from a club. And then I feel so bad because Betsy hates Austin's look. So she says, "Are there bullfights in the future?" She says, "It's too wearable, but something I don't want to wear." Anne hates Wendy's look and also Wendy, but she says that it looks like something her cat chewed up and threw it up. And then Anne asks her about Kevin as a leader. And that's when all hell breaks loose. So what happens is basically a tennis match between Wendy and Karasan. And so what happens is Karasan defends while Wendy attacks. And so they leave the stage, and backstage, the vibes are really bad, like really bad. It was uncomfortable to even watch it. And in confessional, they all say that they disapprove of Wendy's tactics. And in confessional, she cries and whines and is just generally insufferable, as she always is. And then the judges say that they don't think it was cohesive at all and that they agree that Kevin's was awful. They all come back out, and Austin is safe because he's immune. I forgot about that. So I'm so happy because, of course, love Austin. Karasan wins, and she wins immunity. Again, well deserved. Her coat is gorgeous. I would wear it today. And then Jay is in. And again, you guys, Robert is in. He bullshitted his way into the middle. And then we are left with two people that I have been waiting and hoping would have been asked to leave far earlier than this. Wendy, whose outfit was poorly executed, and Kevin, whose outfit was most different from the cohesive from the collection. And it is Kevin who was finally asked to leave. And then when Kevin goes backstage to say goodbye, Tim comes in saying, "Wow." And it makes me wonder if he is watching from the wings or if he knows this is going to happen in advance. But Wendy is smirking as Kevin is saying his goodbyes. Tim actually hugs him though and sends him to clean up his space. And Kevin is very gracious. He says he learned a lot. And he goes over to Jay's workspace and he writes with pencil J kick ass KJ. And so it was I thought, a great episode. We learned a lot about the designers, especially Wendy. I think this episode really showed me how far she was willing to go. So let's move on to our categories. I'm thinking when I look at all of the great Tim Gunn moments, the Top Gun, which is, of course, the category for favorite Tim Gunn moment, was when he says, "I'm reluctantly leaving you." Because I think when he first came in and saw how bad the designs were and how completely disparate they were, I think he didn't really know what to do to convince them to change their path. And so I think he was just so beside himself. For fashion fave, Karasan's amazing Beyond Thunderdome coat that, like I said, I would buy that today. I think it's gorgeous. It really moved well. The colors were cool, the use of the leather. I just think she knows what she's doing. Again, I hate to concur because, of course, she'll tell us if I am quiet for 2 seconds. She'll remind us how long she's been a designer and the work that she's done. But she really is talented. And then exit stage left, which is who we're predicting to leave next episode. And it's blasphemy, but I am going to choose Robert for this. I think that his work has been really bad, and I think that he really has kept his head down for the most part and just flown right under the radar and stayed right in the middle where he literally has attracted very little attention. So I'm looking to see him. I don't want to see Robert's collection. I hope he doesn't get into the finals because as much as I like him as a character, quote unquote, or as a TV personality, I don't want to see his collection of clothes. I really don't. I just don't want to see 10 pairs of wide leg pants. So sorry, Robert. And then our last category, whatever happened to, and we're going to be talking about Kevin John with two N's. So Kevin still lives in New York, and he is currently the CFO and creative director of his own brand, Kevin John, two N's, a collection of luxury, fashion, sophisticated dresses and gowns. He is also the CFO and creative director of the dress line I Love Kevin John, and it's both of those based in New York City. So he's been a pretty successful designer. Fun fact, he actually dressed Heidi Klum for the second season of Project Runway. So if you want to take a look at Kevin's designs, definitely check out his website, but also take a gander at Project Runway season 2 and see what Heidi's wearing because that will all be Kevin John. Cool. Friends, this was a fun episode. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Next time we chat, I'll have a co host with me, and we'll be moving on towards the inevitable final of Project Runway Season 1. I'm looking forward to chatting with you about it. So if you are liking the podcast and the content, or if you just want to rant at us, please leave a review. If you like the podcast, tell a friend. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon. Take care.